Ever wished you could test your app from anywhere in the world, on a schedule, or even before deployment? That's what Datadog Synthetics enables, proactive automated tests that mimic real user behavior. In this video, you'll learn what synthetic tests are, how to set them up, and how to get value from them, fast. So what's a synthetic test? A synthetic test is a simulated request or browser interaction run at scale, from multiple locations or triggered by CI/CD. It helps you validate uptime, latency, and functionality before real users notice. Think of it as constant QA watching over your critical flows. Synthetic tests can run on a fixed schedule, say every minute or hour, or be triggered from tools like Jenkins or GitHub Actions before a deployment. Scheduled runs catch environmental drift over time. Triggered runs validate code before release. Datadog supports three main types. The first type is based on API tests, which run at the network layer across protocols like HTTP, SSL, DNS, WebSocket, TCP, UDP, ICMP. The second type is for browser and mobile tests, which simulate real user journeys in a browser. In total, Datadog supports today 9 different types of tests and multitests, enough to get your use cases covered. Let's walk through API tests to start. Datadog offers multiple single request subtypes: HTTP for testing endpoints, SSL to check certificates, DNS to test resolution, WebSocket and gRPC for streaming, and RPC and TCP, UDP, ICMP for network connectivity. And when you need workflows like add to cart checkout, you use multi-step API tests. Let's walk through creating your first API test. Head to Digital Experience, New Test, and select API. We'll start from scratch here, though there are plenty of ready-made templates to explore. We'll cover those in another video. For now, let's stick to a blank setup. At the top, you'll see all the subtest types we mentioned earlier. You can click into any of them to explore request configuration options. For example, we'll begin with HTTP on the right side. If you need inspiration, there are helpful code snippets ready to guide you. But again, we're building from scratch. Down below, you'll find some advanced options. We won't use them now, but good to know they're there. First step, let's give our test a name, Shopist API Test. In this demo, we'll target the website shopist.io. Just drop the URL in, choose your method, and you're set. Clicking send will fetch the first response and auto-generate some initial assertions. Let's give it a few seconds for the test to load. And there it is! Before we dive into test logic, let's finish the Define Your Request section. There are 3 critical tags to set. First, the environment tag. This tells us where it's running. In our case, production. Next is the team tag. This defines ownership. I'll use DD class as an example. Perfect. The last tag to add is service. This links the test to the backend APM service, helping you trace everything end to end. In this case, I'll tag it as service shopist. And that's it. Those are the minimum required tags. Always include environment and service together to enable better correlation across the platform. And don't forget the team tag. It's key for ownership when things go wrong. On the right-hand side, you'll now see a preview of the request we sent, along with the response headers and body. If the response is JSON, it'll be rendered right here for easy inspection. Datadog also auto-generates assertions based on the response. These define what makes the request pass. From here, it's simple. Just click into your assertions and define what matters. For example, let's check if the body contains a key term, like shop. Hit go and we see it passes. Change the term and it starts to fail. This gives you a quick live check to validate whether your assertions work for this response. You can also write advanced assertions using JavaScript, but we'll save that for another time. Here we've got 4 assertions, and all 4 must pass for the test to succeed. Not quite done yet. Assertions are set. Now let's move on to the next step, defining where these synthetic tests should run. Datadog offers 29 built-in global locations, and you can also configure private ones, deployed in your own data centers, for instance. Keep in mind, the more locations you choose, the more test executions you'll trigger, and that means higher costs. So only select the locations that truly matter to you and turn off the rest. Here, we'll begin by removing the default location and selecting our own, say Los Angeles, Mumbai, and Frankfurt. That wraps up locations. Next, required conditions. Should the test fail on the first error, or retry if something goes wrong? For flaky systems, retries might help. but I recommend starting with 0 retries by default. With 0 retries, the next key step is scheduling and setting alert conditions. How often should the test run? You can choose a basic schedule, like every 12 hours, or go advanced if needed. In this case, we'll stick to basics and define when alerts should trigger. For example, you can set alerts to trigger after failures from multiple locations over a few minutes, or just from 1 or 3. All of that is configurable right here. Also remember, frequency impacts cost. The more often the test runs, the higher the cost. But if you run it too infrequently, you lose that immediate feedback, the kind that alerts you before users are impacted. So find the sweet spot, the right balance of notification speed and cost. Ideally, set a schedule you can afford before issues occur. One major benefit of running synthetic tests every 5 minutes is that consistent, repetitive checks give you reliable data, perfect for building SLOs and defining service level indicators for your app. Now we're at the final stage of the test. First, let's define a title and alert message. I'll go with "Shopist is down" as the title and start crafting the message. As I mentioned in my monitor tutorials, alerts should be actionable. So I'll say something like, "Shopist appears to be down." Please follow this process to start troubleshooting. Step 1, go to the dashboard. Here, I'd include a direct link, plus who to contact, like Contact X. Then follow the documentation. Drop a link to it right here, for example. Perfect. That's now in place. You can also use template variables to make messages dynamic, so they change depending on whether it's an alert or a recovery. In this case, I'd configure it as an alert to trigger, only when something goes down. You can also set a different message for when the issue resolves. And since tests run from multiple locations, you can use variables to include that detail, so you'll know exactly where things are failing. Set the priority. This helps with internal organization if the test is critical, high, or low. And finally, you can restrict access if this test is key to your workflow or SLOs, so no one modifies it by mistake. If that's relevant, toggle it on, then click Save, and the test will begin running. After a few seconds, the test results will start showing. At the top, you'll see the overall status. Everything's looking good. You'll also see a summary of the configuration, and below that, the global uptime, tracking how long the service has stayed up versus any downtime. You'll see the test running across different locations, along with latency for each. Since I set it to run every 12 hours, I've only got one data point so far. Clicking Run Test Now gives me a second data point, and just like that, all 3 locations show up here. For more detail, we can check the network timing. This shows how each part of the request breaks down. Below that, you'll see each test run listed with its type: manual, scheduled, or triggered from CI/CD. You can even kick one off via command, and it'll show right here in the list. If you're running tests frequently and only want to focus on failures, just click on Failed to filter the list. In my case, nothing's failed, so the list is empty. When switched back to All, I can click into any test to review what happened and see all the details, like the IP address, CDN provider, and more. If the test had failed, I'd also get extra info, like the response body, to help with troubleshooting. And that wraps up our synthetic API test walkthrough. Next up, browser tests. These simulate real user journeys, clicking, navigating, filling forms, in a real browser. They're great for validating UI flows end-to-end. And Datadog uses a smart locator algorithm to make tests self-healing even when UI shifts slightly. Let's pick up where we left off. Head back to Digital Experience, New Test, and this time choose Browser Tests. Again, you've got templates to help you get started, but for this demo, I'll go with Start from Scratch. I'll enter the URL, and once again we'll use shopist.io. If needed, I can configure some advanced setup options. On the right, there are helpful snippets to guide you. As usual, I'll tag the environment, service, and team for the browser Shopist test, so everything links up with the rest of my app. And that covers the initial setup. Just like with the API test, we'll choose the locations, browsers, and device type for this setup. Keep in mind, each added location or device increases how often the test runs. So even if you think it's once a day, it could actually run almost 90 times, 29 locations from 3 devices each time. It's smart to keep your location list focused. For example, I'll go with Frankfurt and Osaka. My users are on Chrome, so I'll stick with that. No need for Firefox or tablets in this case, this setup works for me. And as always, you can use private locations. Great if you need to test from sites not covered by Datadog's managed locations. In other words, the same retree settings, scheduling, and alert conditions apply as in the API test. You'll still define frequency, and just like before, the more often you run it, the more it costs. Lastly, we'll set up the monitor to activate it. For this example, I'll move quickly through the setup. Set the priority. I'll mark it low since this task isn't critical. Then update permissions if you want to restrict who can modify the test. Next up, we'll save and start recording. This is where things get really interesting. Just make sure the Datadog Chrome extension is installed. Then head back to the recorder. Click record to begin capturing your actions step by step. For example, you might go into the chair section. Click on a chair, add it to your cart, return to the cart, which now shows one item, and proceed to checkout. That's a typical user flow on your e-commerce for this demo. Once you stop recording, you'll see all your steps captured on the side panel. We'll cover browser tests in more depth later, but one key feature to know now is assertions. For example, you might want to confirm that the final step shows a thank you message, which in this case is already pre-filled. I'll simply apply it as the final step. Then hit save recording, and the whole test flow will be saved and replayed. After a few minutes, the test will show up, and here we can see the steps played out, with one of them failing. Click any step to dive into the details. If APM and tracing are enabled, that data will appear too. For more best practices, keep up to our video series on synthetics, and we will cover a lot more. For deeper insight into costly tests, tools like Datica, or your internal billing dashboard, help identify high-usage monitors. Here's a snapshot of a Datica cost dashboard for synthetics. It helps you instantly spot your most expensive tests and uncover what's driving the cost, whether it's frequency, number of locations, step count, device type, or something else entirely. Even better, Datica automatically reviews your setup against best practices. The goal? Help you make fast, informed decisions and run a lean, effective monitoring strategy. That's your full walkthrough of synthetic testing in Datadog, covering everything from setup and scheduling to monitoring and tagging best practices. Next up, we'll tackle advanced workflows, authentication flows, chained multi-step API tests with variable extraction, global variables, and CI/CD triggers. If this helped you level up your monitoring, hit like, subscribe, and drop any questions below. We're just getting started. And as always, happy monitoring!